There are many different ways that you can go about progressing your exercise. So with any exercise that you see, whether it's on the internet or in a magazine, whatever it might be, there's a certain way that you can progress to doing any one of those exercises. You just got to know where it is that you're starting from, what's going to be appropriate at that point, and different ways that you can go about progressing to that more advanced one. So we usually see a highlight reel on social media, people doing some pretty advanced stuff like Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, lifting heavy weights with barbells or dumbbells, whatever the case may be. You got to know where you're starting from. If you're somebody that's never lifted weights before, that's going to seem maybe intimidating. That might seem like it's just never going to be possible for you. But there is a way. With consistent work, there is a way where you can progress towards any exercise if you put your mind to it and continuously put the work in. So right here, I have a few different examples of different exercises that you can start with. You may not start at the first one. You may find that you can start somewhere in the middle, and then you can gradually progress to more and more advanced exercises over time. How long is that going to take? I don't really know. It depends on you and how consistent you are. Whether or not you have a coach is another big factor. So you are going to need to perhaps be patient with yourself when it comes to progressing, because it can take maybe several months to progress to the next exercise or the next stage of your individual progression. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list. These are not the only exercises that you can utilize. These are just some things that I have used myself, and I have other videos, shorts, and other videos that actually demonstrate a lot of these exercises that we're going to go over. So let's start off with the squat. Okay, squat's considered to be the king of all exercises. Very important, should be a staple in everybody's program, no matter what your goals are. If you have some sort of limitation, you should be working your way towards being able to do a squat, but I digress. So a couple different ways you can go about progressing to doing more advanced squats. So you can start off with a sit to stand exercise. This literally has you starting in a seated position on a chair, on a bench, whatever, and you stand up. Then you sit back down with control. Try not to plop down into the chair or onto the bench. Depending on how high the bench or chair or whatever it is that you're using will dictate how difficult it will be. If it's something lower, it may challenge you more. If you're not used to squatting low, and if you have some hip restrictions or some strength restrictions. So pick something that's going to challenge you a little bit, but not something that's going to make it impossible to do. So sit to stand's a good place to start for a lot of people that maybe haven't been very active in a long time. Maybe you've lost some strength. And then you can move your way to a body weight. BW stands for body weight squat. And you hang out there for a while until you're able to bust out sets of 10 or more without a problem. So if you're somebody that has mastered the sit to stand, you can do a few bodyweight squats, but maybe a set of 8 to 10 really gasses you out. You're going to want to hang out and do bodyweight squats for a period of time until you're able to do a bunch without a problem. 4 or 5 sets of 10 perhaps without too much trouble would maybe be a good place to be before you really start getting into adding weight, which is the next stage. So doing something like a goblet squat where you're holding a dumbbell at your chest and you're squatting now with some added weight, some added resistance. Goblet squat is really great. Most everybody can do a goblet squat who has been able to master doing body weight squats and has a decent amount of strength and muscular endurance. So goblet squats can be done with dumbbells or kettlebells, even with weight plates, whatever you can hold up against your chest. And then finally, you would progress to barbell squats. So a back squat where the bar is literally held on your back, front squats where it's held on the shoulders. Those are more advanced squat exercises that you can do. And there's, of course, others like overhead squats, thrusters, whatever that might be. But getting yourself to being able to do back squats you're in a really good place. You've got a good amount of strength and mobility. So if you want to go more advanced than that, be my guest. But that for a lot of people is probably a good end point. When you get to a back squat or any kind of barbell squat variation, then you can start really working on building up your weight. So if you want to get stronger, the goal would be to continuously add more weight to build more strength. If you want to have better muscular endurance for whatever reason, then you're going to want to work on the amount of repetitions that you can do at certain weights. But you always want to do both. All right. So I digress from that, but that back squat is a great place to be because it uses a lot of muscles all at once, and you're able to load a lot of weight on your body. Very functional. So another way to progress the squat, an alternative approach. Starting off using a leg press machine, whether it's one of those 45-degree machines where you load the plates onto it like a barbell, or if it's some sort of more traditional machine with the plates that you push the pin into. You can use a leg press machine to get you started. If you have a hard time doing body weight squats or even a sit to stand perhaps, that's a good place to start. Because again, it uses multiple joints, your knees and your hips as well. So it's better than doing, say, a leg extension, right? Leg extension machine or a leg curl machine. Because you're using both those joints, which is going to more closely simulate a squat. So from the leg press, once you're able to do somewhere around your body weight for multiple reps, you can then move on to, say, an assisted squat using bands. So super bands, which are these giant rubber bands you can buy. You can get them easily on Amazon or any exercise or weight exercise equipment websites. Get the super bands, tie it to some sort of cross beam in your house or a pull-up bar, and you can wrap that thing under your arms and give yourself some assistance when you perform squats. Again, I have more videos in the shorts and in my, I believe in my longer form videos too, on how to do assisted squats. You can also use Gray Cook tubes or bands. Those are another good option you can look into. So assisted squats take some of your body weight away so you're able to squat deeper and with more confidence, and then you would work your way again up to a body weight squat, and then a goblet squat, and then eventually a back squat or a front squat, whatever it is that you can do. So that's a couple different ways you can go about progressing to more advanced squats. Now, these progressions, again, these could take weeks, these could take months or several years, depending on your specific needs. You might need to stop and stay at one. If you have perhaps some sort of joint replacement, you may have some restrictions there, or you just don't want to do specific forms of squats. But these are good places. These are useful exercises to do and pretty good progressions as well. Next up, the press. So when I talk about the press, I mean overhead press. All right, so we're going vertical here. So overhead pressing, you can start off with what's called a landmine press. So a lot of gyms these days have what's called a landmine attachment that can attach to like a rig, or you can simply put the bar in a free corner of the gym with a towel at the end of it so it doesn't scratch the wall. And you literally hold on to the very end of the bar and you press. All right. So again, if you look in the shorts, you'll find the landmine press in there. You can see how that's done more specifically. But this is a great option for a lot of people because if you're over 40, maybe even younger than that, a lot of you are going to have issues getting your arm over your head effectively. You're going to be restricted. It's going to hang out over here or something. You're going to arch your back a lot when you try to do it. So landmine press is kind of more like an incline bench press where you come out at this angle instead of straight over your head. So it's a good place to start. You can still strengthen the deltoids and the triceps while you work on loosening your shoulders up, focusing on stretching the lats, the triceps, the pecs, so you can get your arm back more. Landmine press combined with some mobility drills. Then you can eventually move on to a dumbbell single arm overhead press. Single arm is easier to perform. So I would start there after you're able to get your mobility and build some strength, and then some dumbbells. So 2 hands or 1 dumbbell in each hand, and you press them at the same time, reaching back, getting straight over your head. That's going to be more challenging to your shoulder and upper back mobility than the single arm. So be ready for that. Don't think you're going to be doing the same weights, perhaps. You might need to go lighter when you jump to that one. And then finally, barbell overhead pressing. Once you're able to build up your mobility and your strength a bit, barbell's a good option. Now, you could, in theory, skip the dumbbell single arm press and the dumbbell press and go right to the barbell one once you've mastered the landmine and gotten your mobility in check. They do make bars that are lighter if your gym has some, which I don't think very many gyms have lighter barbells than 45 pounds. Maybe some gyms have 35s, but at my gym, we have 15-pound aluminum bars, which come in very handy, in particular for those that can't overhead press or bench press 45 plus pounds on day one. So that's something to look into as well. They're not that expensive, by the way, if you want to buy one yourself. So that would be a progression you can use to overhead pressing. And then finally, the deadlift. So with the deadlift is not a squat. Okay, it's what's known as a hip hinge, where I predominantly bend at the hips, and my knees, they do bend, but it's not a squat. I'm not squatting and bending my knees a lot. I'm hinging at my hips. Now, this can be a tricky thing to learn at first. If you're somebody that doesn't have much experience, this can be a little tricky to learn how to do properly, but the deadlift is predominantly a hip movement where you're bending at the hip a lot more than the knee. So learning hip hinging through some hip hinging drills, it will be key initially to get your positioning right. And then also to not allow your back to round excessively either. Then the next one, Romanian deadlifts, or RDLs for short. So the RDL, a great alternative to the conventional deadlift where you start from the floor. This one starts standing, so you can take the bar out of a rack. You start standing, you can set your back much easier in this position, and then you go from the top down. You can do that with dumbbells. You can do it with a barbell as well. And it's very accessible, I've found. For 90% of people out there can usually do an RDL fairly well, fairly quickly. But make sure you drill that hinge pattern first. So RDLs, then move on to some kettlebell deadlifts. Now, some of you may need to start with the kettlebell elevated, maybe place it on an aerobic stepper so you don't have to get all the way to the floor and round your spine excessively. But kettlebell deadlifts is another place to go to in between. You won't be able to load it up quite as much as the RDL, but now you're starting to learn to pull the weight off the floor. So kettlebell deadlifts are another good in between. And then finally, you get to the barbell deadlift. So now there's a couple of different deadlifts. I tend to use conventional deadlifts where the feet are on the inside of the hands. A lot of people will also use sumo, where it's the opposite, where you have a wide stance and your hands are on the inside of your legs. Now, whatever you decide to do is completely up to you. You can experiment with both and see what feels better, what allows you to maybe lift more weight. But pick one and try to stick with it for a while. All right? But try to do both. Try to have the ability to do both variations of the deadlift. But there is a good progression. Now, again, I have had people go from hinging drills, maybe do some kettlebell deadlifts and then the barbell. But I've also had people skip it. Okay? Once they get the hinge down, they can go right to barbell deadlifts. But if you prefer to take a more gradual approach, build some more strength before you do that, you're absolutely welcome to. It really, again, all depends on where you are, what your physical capabilities are right now, and what are the proper steps to take to get there. So any number of people could start anywhere on any of these progressions and eventually end up to getting to more advanced exercises. So again, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are just some variations and some progressions that I have used in my 13 plus years of training now, which is crazy to think about. But try some of these out. Try progressing towards these other things. Check out my other videos and shorts on here to see demonstrations of, I think, just about all of these exercises that I have on here. And thank you for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, and get strong, live long.